spar with people that had 30 years in the industry just because my mentor had 30 plus years in the industry. And so he kind of just brain dumped as much as he could into me to help me. So that was my mentorship relationship. And yes, as you mentioned, Jimmy, it was amazingly helpful. I wouldn't be, probably anywhere without that experience, or at least be very delayed in getting to where I am today. So yeah, that I think, and I think this show is a good example. I mean, looking for answers from other people who have had experiences as opposed to having to have all those experiences yourself. I mean, you get lifetimes of learning in a very short period of time that way versus having to, hit your head against the wall 100 times and figure it out yourself.
Yeah, I think that you bring up a very important, sentiment about this mentor, if you will, because I always looked at it the same way, the handshake, okay, you're officially my mentor, I'll be calling you next week, or vice versa, right? But, there's mentors all around us, and I think that understanding that and realizing that there might not be that formality of a mentor, but, there's people that will take an interest in you or what appears to be very helpful for you to advance your career. And I think oftentimes those people are overlooked by the recipient and not really, because they're looking for that handshake, not realizing, hey, this person's bringing a lot of value to my life. Maybe I should pay better attention.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I read the Sheryl Sandberg book not that long ago, and it kind of said the same thing. It's like people would come up to her at the end of her speech and kind of say like, "Oh, will you be my mentor now?" And she's like, "I don't know you, and I'm like the CEO of a huge company and can't, or CFO of a huge company, can't help you, kind of thing." But she's like, "I kind of just did mentor you, right, through this speech if it impacted you in that way." And so she was kind of saying the same thing you just said, right, where it's basically like not every mentor has to be this formal. I mean, it'd be great, and I think you should look for it if you can, but that's not always the circumstance, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't value it, like you're saying.
Yeah, sure. Now, being in the position you're in and making a couple of these references I've heard you say so far, do you have a daily routine that you get into to get yourself in the mindset of conducting business at the level that you do? You've mentioned Tony Robbins. I know he's got some morning routines. What about yourself?
Yeah, exercise is a big way that I clear my head, and it took me decades of doing this and not really paying attention to it to actually realize that was a bit of my routine. I stopped. I'm a big runner. I like to run a lot, and when I stopped doing that, that's when I realized that that was a really important part of my routine. So yeah, I try to jog every day. That's a big kind of clear my head, kind of think to myself kind of time. And then just, kind of getting up early and getting started before kind of the general workday starts so I can get kind of my plans set up. So before the flood of emails and phone calls and things start happening when I just kind of more reactive. So really those kind of key things. And then anytime I'm in between travel, like the big thing that I've been focused on, and Jim, your show is a good example, like try to pick up podcasts or audiobooks or things like that so that when I'm driving or walking or traveling between places, just kind of constantly putting good stuff in my head as much as possible. That's kind of the gist of my routine, I think.
Yeah, I'm very similar. I do a lot of running. That way I can flush out all my problems on my long runs. But,
yeah.
I think it's interesting what you said about the podcast and putting good information in. I think so often we put bad information in our head, just organically, things that are on the TV, whether it's a news or a show, that, you turn it off feeling like, gosh, I'm drained from what I just watched for the last 2 hours. And I really have been on a focus of putting positive things into my mind because I feel like when I'm done listening to something like that, I'm in a much better state mentally, not only for my family, but for my business as well. Sounds like that's kind of what you're doing with your podcast and different things you're doing.
Yeah, 100%. Sometimes people chide me about it and say, like, you don't get the holistic approach to things by just focusing on the positive. And that very well may be true, but I find the same thing you just said. I mean, when I listen to a good, upbeat, knowledge sharing kind of flow like this, I feel great at the end. If I listen to somebody who's just complaining about all their problems and or like watching the news, like you said, it's too much for me. Maybe I'm just too sensitive, but I agree totally. Putting as much good stuff in is really where I focus, and it helps me. It works for me.
Yeah. I want to ask you about your business in a second. I look at your website and look at all the projects you guys are working on. What tools do you use personally to keep yourself organized? People are always asking me, because I've got a number of projects I work on a daily basis, how I stay organized. But I'm curious how you stay organized with all these properties you've got going and what looks to be a lot of development.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's the team more than anything. I mean, we have a lot of really, sharp, hardworking people on our group, and that's always the core of it, because you can have a lot of great tools, and if you don't have people using those tools in the right way or using them religiously, it won't matter. But yeah, a good question. I mean, from a content management standpoint, we use Insightly, which helps keep my kind of world organized. And we have 500 active individual investors that I have to constantly kind of keep in my mind about, what they're invested in, and who are they, and when did I last meet with them, things like that. That's a critical piece for me to just keep my sanity. And then we use a Juniper Square, which is an investor relations platform specifically for real estate. It's pretty expensive and kind of sophisticated, so we didn't start there, but that's what we use now. And then Smartsheets is kind of a project management process tracking standpoint. Those are kind of the big three that at least I interact with. I mean, obviously we have a lot of other systems as far as communication tools and things like that, but those are the kind of big three that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, sure. Well, give us some insight as to your company and what you guys do. What I've read so far is fascinating, and the development projects that you're working on currently just look amazing. So I'd love to hear more about what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So we started as a extension of kind of a bunch of family offices, and for those who aren't familiar, a family office is nothing more than a fancy way of saying a bunch of rich people who are related that usually invest together. And I used to work for some of these people, and then kind of just got to organically know a few more as time went on. And so we used to work almost exclusively for these family office investors. And basically what we would do is we'd say, here's a business plan, and here's a few investments that we want to do. Which do you like, which do you not like, and kind of do the deals accordingly, and basically do them essentially for them. And then we would ongoing keep the management and basically make it a turnkey operation for these families who, were very sophisticated, wealthy, and could have done a lot of these things on their own, but either were too busy or didn't have all the skill sets in-house that we did. So that's how we started, and we still do that. A lot of our work is still in that realm, but we've expanded over the last 5 or 6 years into taking more individual investors, so kind of just the regular high net worth people, so just people who have additional funds that they wanted to invest in real estate. A lot of them tend to be, kind of other full-time working doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs of all kinds. And some of them are other real estate people, but for the most part, honestly, our best customers have been those who are too busy to do these things on their own. And that's really what we cater to, is those who just want almost like a set it and forget it model. They interview us and get to trust us, and then they kind of invest in all of our projects going forward. And those projects, like I said, we're landlords, so we buy and fix and build projects that are struggling or having trouble, or just a piece of land, as you mentioned in our development case, and then we build cash flowing assets out of them. And for the most part, we try to hold on to those cash flowing assets for the long term. There are occasions where it's just make too much money to hold on to them, so you sell them, but for the most part, that's we're after the cash flow, the long run of the real estate.
Sure. So what you're saying is, if maybe some of my listeners were interested in getting involved in investing into real estate, that your company might be somebody they can research and look at putting some money into for some real estate investments.
Yeah, that's always an option. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
And then, what's the turnaround or the benefit for those people that are looking at getting involved? I actually didn't realize the extent to everything that you guys do, but I know we've got a lot of people that listen to the show that have called and are looking for opportunities. So it seems fascinating to get involved with commercial real estate and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so we're only commercial, so we don't do kind of the fix and flip or house or kind of smaller models that a lot of other people are out there doing. We came from a much larger institutional company background, doing much larger projects, and that's for the most part still what we do. Kind of $5 million projects and up, all the way to a couple $100 million projects. And the benefit of working, with a group like us is like we have all the expertise and experience and knowledge, and you guys can just, or any investor can just, passively be involved in that. So you get all the economic benefits of, a much larger project without having to write, millions of dollars of check yourself, because we break it up into smaller pieces for individual investors. Our usual investment is $25,000 to $50,000 kind of to start. And obviously some of our investors invest, tens of millions of dollars. And so it's kind of all over the map, whatever works best for those. But it's a nice way to kind of give you an alternative source of income, alternative source of growth, depending on the transaction that you're invested in. And it's, we try to make it as seamless as possible. Like with all that investor reporting stuff, we have tried to create a platform similar to like TD Ameritrade or others. Basically log into our platform, check out how all your investments are doing with us. And the checks, we distribute ACH distributions monthly. So you're getting your account, you don't have to go out and paper cash the check or worry about things like that. It's all kind of reported and done electronically. It's very simple and straightforward.
I see on your website you've got an article about crowdfunding, and I suppose in a sense this is a crowdfunding type opportunity with a different format than what people are normally used to seeing on their Facebook pages.
Yeah, so right. Yeah, it's they kind of lump everything together now and say it's crowdfunding. I mean, really, to me, it's interesting. One of the things that I did say yes to a while back is when the Jobs Act came out in 2008, I think it was. They kind of changed our industry and kind of the financial industry in general to being much less restrictive about what you can and cannot tell people. So when I first started doing things, I mean, if we didn't have a relationship, I couldn't even tell you what I did for a living and give you an opportunity to invest with us. It was a very weird thing where I had to grow a company without telling anybody about what we did or having the only way that people could invest with us is if they already had a relationship with us. So it's like, I don't understand how that even works, but you kind of manage that as it goes. And then over time, with the Jobs Act, a bunch of other changes in our industry, you've now been able to actually tell people, oh, this is what we do, and this is the types of returns we expect, and this is kind of how we do it, and this is how much money you need to invest, and things like that, which is kind of like very logical, but wasn't really what we were able to do for about since the 1930s. That's just kind of how it's been. And so one of the things that we said yes to early on was there was a kind of a risk factor of like, well, it's unknown how these regulations are going to be tested if things go bad or whatever. And we got on board really early on and said like, look, I think this just makes sense. Like this is just how our business should be run. And it's the only way to grow a business is to be able to tell your customers about what it is you're selling. So we did that early on. And that's essentially what crowdfunding is. In my mind, I mean, it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but it really means that now we're allowed to legally tell others what we're doing and have them join us. That's kind of how we've used it.
Yeah. One thing that I spend a lot of time doing is talking about goals and planning for your future or your retirement and knowing what those numbers are and what you're going to need in retirement. And I also find it interesting that real estate can be a part of your retirement plan as well. And I think that's important for people to understand because there can be a regular stream of income there too, right? I mean, this is a great passive income opportunity in some cases.
Yeah, I mean, again, depending on the structure and the person you're working with, it absolutely can be. I mean, that's been our focus. I mean, like I said, the family offices we work with that are super wealthy, they're not worried about their retirement. They're worried about their great grandkids and things like that. So they're really setting up these cash flowing properties so that their great grandkids have enough money that they never have to worry about anything. And it's the same thing whether it's for yourself, right? If you're just saying, oh, I want more retirement income, it's a great way to get diversity outside the traditional stock and bond market. And can yield some pretty positive returns if things go well. Mm-hmm.
So, would you consider it low risk, medium, or high risk in most of these deals?
Yeah, well, it can be everything. I think most people that I meet with think it's super high risk, and so they want super high returns, and I think that's fine. There's certainly nothing wrong with that. I mean, especially. Development deals are a good example of that, where it's a piece of dirt now and you have to kind of imagine what it will be and actually build it and then deliver the tenants and all those things. So those are the kind of high risk deals that we do and a lot of people do. But there also can be lower risk things like, the triple net lease, cash flowing deals. So like a lease where the tenant basically pays all of the expenses and all the increases in those expenses, has a long-term lease and is a great credit tenant. Like that would be the example of what I would consider a low end risk spectrum real estate transaction. So I mean, it really can fit whatever it is that you're looking for, but you have to be careful to, A, know what you want, and B, make sure that the person you're talking with can execute what it is you want, because a lot of companies just focus on one or the other. They don't have the kind of blended choices of risk there.
Yeah, sure. So what's on the horizon for your company and where are you guys heading in the future?
Yeah, so we moved the company to Phoenix, Arizona about 2 years ago, and we've been trying to do a lot more in the Southwest, specifically because of that. We started the company in New York City in 2006 and had done a lot of East Coast projects just based on that. And we still will do that, but I think expanding west and especially southwest, especially with a lot of the growth going on down here in Texas and a lot of the other markets over here, that will be where we will see a lot of our future growth. We will still do deals all over the country.